students. Today we are going to discuss syncretism in Kabir's work. This unit would enable the students to understand the concept of syncretism, syncretism in Kabir's work, universal humanism in Kabir's work, syncretism in Kabir's composition, and the significance of the bijak of Kabir. To start with the basic idea of syncretism, the Oxford English Dictionary defines syncretism as attempted union or reconciliation of diverse and opposed tenets or practices, especially in philosophy and religion. The term syncretism has often been widely misrepresented or misinterpreted by scholars of different disciplines in social sciences, including anthropology. It is often used without a clear and unambiguous definition, and definition is often a difficult exercise or enterprise, especially so in the area of religion. A number of work relating to syncretism interprets the term as mere borrowing of cultural traits among two or more than two groups, more specifically between Hindus and Muslims, or Hindus and Christians, or even between tribals and non-tribals, or tribal and Christianity. It might also be used to refer to cases when elements from one religion are accepted into another without basically changing the character of the receiving religion. These are certain essential features of syncretism, which are: firstly, it emerges only when two dissenting groups unite together as a front or face a common crisis or a common enemy or foe. Secondly, it is temporary in nature. The everlasting impact on the Indian social, cultural, and religious life has been made by Islam and Christianity. Both entered into India at different times and phases. Both Islam and Christianity made an impact on the traditional Indian life and culture because the followers of both the religions ruled over the country for over 800 years and evangelized the people by any means possible. Such a long rule by the Muslims in India would bring everlasting impact on Indian society and culture. The impact of Islam in India can be seen not only in India's social life, but it also can be seen or discovered in art and architecture, in literature and in language, in philosophical thought, in dresses and food habits, and in many such dimensions. Unaccountable number of mutual borrowing, even assimilation of social and cultural elements have taken place among Hindus and Muslims. Now we come to the understanding of syncretism in Kabir's work. Kabir was an Indian mystic whose teaching stressed on two primary themes: the possibility of spiritual union with the Divine One and the utter possibility of harmony in all religious and ideological distinctions. He not only conducted himself on the righteous and accepting path of life, but also talked uniquely about the virtues of life which are to be followed by each one in his or her life. He always preached people to be sympathetic towards other living beings and practice true love. He urged the need to have good company who adheres to values and principles. Kabir's poetry is a reflection of his philosophy about life. His writings were mainly based on the concept of reincarnation and karma. Although he was drawn deeply into spiritual life, he openly criticized all sects and gave a new direction to Indian philosophy with his straightforward approach to various aspects of human existence. It is important to point out that Kabir did not preach against any particular religion, but he spoke strongly against the hypocrisy committed by people in the name of religion. Though he avoided getting attached to any particular religion and the various obligations associated with these religions, However, after his death, Kabir was subsequently claimed by various religious communities, including the Hindu Sants, the Sikhs, and the Muslim Sufis. The syncretic absorption of the poet's teaching were enabled by the fact that he was himself illiterate, which means that his poems and couplets were only indirectly reached or recorded. As a result, various interpretations from different traditions, each working with their own vernacular languages, recorded their own version of Kabir, different forms of poetry that was orated by him verbally and were later taken down or jotted down by his followers in four parts. These are Kutvani, Taksar, Mool Gyan, and Bijagbani. This process generated distinct textual corpuses, each with their own particular perception of Kabir. Regardless of this proliferation of text with different versions of Kabir, the mystic sages' underlying emphasis on the attainment of oneness with the divine is never lost and continues to echo throughout all the interpretations of his work. He was a skeptic and always questioned the concept of incarnation, the various social evils like racism based on caste, color, and creed. The Indian subcontinent always boasted itself of being the medley of various cultures and religion. At the time of Kabir, the impact of various religion on the society was evident. Yet there was mutual mistrust, fanatism, and religious rigidity among the various factions like Sindhi cult, Nath cult, and their counterparts from Central Asia. All these cultural groups were drawing their support in the name of passionate religious practices, and most of which were against the higher human laws and values. Kabir, through his poetry, not only tried to mitigate the differences between these religions and religious practices and what is being made in the name of God by controlling the senses of the people, but also yielded valuable teachings through his oration, as to him, human being was the supreme. To many commentators, the philosophy of Kabir is a syncretic amalgamation of Hinduism and Islam, but intellectuals widely declare that this is false and misunderstanding of Kabir's work. He adopted their terminologies and various concepts, but vigorously criticized both their practices and could not pave the way of harmony for entire humanity. He understood the ineffectiveness of action being made in the name of yajna mindlessly. He not only criticized every action thus performed by all the factions of the then Indian society, but asked everyone to concentrate on the self and consider this ultimate reality and sole motto of the life, since action performed for the sake of rituals do not yield emancipation, which is the ultimate goal of human life. Thus, he cautions everyone to perform action with understanding that could yield a way of everlasting contentment and joy. He pressed upon the need for harmony, which could pave way for everlasting happiness to everyone. For him, any holy book had no meaning if it could not pave way for the joy of everyone, as stated in Kabir Granthawali, which is as follows: reading books after books, the whole world died, and none ever became learned. In the popular book called Kabir, the great mystic, the author Isaac Ezekiel says, Kabir's songs seek nobody's approbation, they seek no sanction, ask for no approval, search for no popularity, invite no condemnation, and crave for no compliment. They stand independent of these considerations, and they constitute the most uninhabited literature and freest of free writings ever produced by a saint. Kabir rejected the Hippocratic rituals and practices associated with religions of his time, including both Hinduism and Islam. His words in this context can be quoted as follows: Saints have seen both ways. Hindus and Muslims don't want discipline. Kabir want tasty food. The Hindu keeps the 11-day fast, eating chestnuts and milk. He carbs his grain, but not his brain. He breaks his fast with meat. The Turks praise daily, fast once a year, and crows God, God, like a cock. What heavens is reserved for people who kill chickens in the dark. Instead of kindness and compassion, Kabir have cast all out desire. One kills with a chop, one lets the blood drop. In both houses burns the same fire. Turks and Hindus have one way. The Gurus made it clear. Don't say Ram, don't say Khuda. So says Kabir. Through his songs and poems, he preached the intrinsic worth of humanity and the futility of blindly following religious practices that not only promoted but also upheld social discrimination. His writings include Vijak, Anurag Sagar, Sakhi Granth, Kabir Bani, and Kabir Granthvani. The most sacred book of the Kabir Panthis is the Bijak. The Bijak appeals its reader to shed their delusion, pretensions, and orthodoxies in favor of a direct experience of truth. It ridicules hypocrisy and greed and violence, especially among the religions. The Bijak includes three main sections called the Ramayani, Shabda, and Sakhi, and a fourth section containing miscellaneous folk songs. Most of Kabir's materials has been popularized through the song form known as Shabda and through the aphrostic two-line Doha that serves throughout North India as a vehicle of popular wisdom. In the Anurag Sagar, the story of creation is told to Dharmdas, one of Kabir's disciples. Kabir was strictly against the practice of duplicity and did not like people maintaining double standards. He always asked people to be compassionate towards each other and other living beings and practice true love. He urged the need to have the company of good people. Kabir's poetry is an echo of his philosophy about life. His writings were mainly based on the concept of reincarnation and karma. He has very beautifully expressed his values and beliefs in his writings that include dohas, poems, ramayanis, kahavas, and the shabdas. Kabir Das is the first Indian saint who has always tried to synchronize Hinduism and Islam by giving a universal path which could be followed by both of these religious groups. He always objected to the ritualistic and ascetic methods as means of salvation. He said that the ruby of goodness has more value than the mines of ruby. According to him, one's own heart with goodness includes all the richness of the world. He preached the inner goodness of men and asked men to offer inward worship to him because God resides in the heart of every man. He unlocked the rationality of the people and taught them genuine lessons of humanity, morality, and spirituality. His life history is legendary and still teaches human beings about the real value of humanity. His followers are known as the Kabir Panthis. In present days, these people carry forward Kabir's thought of humanity and harmony in society. Although he was drawn deeply into spiritual life, he openly disapproved the unconvincing practices and rituals of all sects and gave a new definition or direction to Indian philosophy with his straightforward style of interpretation on various aspects of human existence. It is important to note that Kabir was not preaching against any religion, but he was only against the hypocrisy committed by people in the name of religion. He taught people the true religion is of the heart. He wanted to turn people away from the empty ritualism of religion and to show them the inner path that leads one to union with the divinity. In other words, he taught self-realization and loving devotion to the formless divine power that dwells within. Though self-realization has been taught in Advaita Veda or non-dualistic school of philosophy in India, Kabir re emphasized this teaching along with loving devotion of great passion and fervor. And this kind of explains the concept of universal humanism in Kabir's work. Now we come to the understanding of syncretism from Kabir's various compositions. Kabir, by way of his composition, has emphasized on the concept of cohesion and oneness of God, which could be achieved only through devoutness. He does not discriminate between religious practices and religions. To him, everybody has an equal right to attain the grace of God. According to Kabir, all human can attain the divine grace, irrespective of caste, creed, etc. Thus, the path to realization of the divinity of God lies in complete righteous conduct, together with complete surrender, and not only in any kind of rituals and sacrificial practices. A number of songs accredited to Kabir disclose his grounding in Hindu ethics, or rather his ardent protest of the classical Brahmanical understanding of Varna Sharma, Dharma, untouchability, and caste, and how to obtain freedom from the cycle of death and rebirth. Again and again, he voices his doubt to the effectiveness of the formalized rituals and religious practices and teachings of both Hinduism and Islam, asking why did not God create Muslim circumcised if that's what God wanted, or why God cannot hear a whisper call to prayer just as well as one should from the rooftops. He is especially unsatisfied at the lack of connection between spoken prayers and what they pray for, singing. The pundits and panditries are lies because, for if saying Ram gave liberation, saying candy made your mouth sweet, saying fire burned your feet, saying water quenched your thirst, saying food banished hunger, the whole world would be free. Since the whole world is far from free, there must be some problem with the teachings of the Hindu pundits, and thus they must be false. And there must be some other teachings, some other way to break free of the soul's enslavement to Maya or illusion. He was not only critical about the rituals and customs of the caste-based Hindu society, Kabir balanced his blunt critique with invitation for his listeners to discover the real truth by trusting their own experience and seeking God within instead of living their lives according to the rules of Varna Sharma, Dharma, the moral duties of caste. According to the ancient author Nabadas, who mentioned Kabir in his Bhaktmala 1592, in one song, Kabir likens the pundits and their followers as a speaking parrot who can say God but does not know God's glory. For if you don't see, if you don't touch, what's the use of a name? Here Kabir vents his frustration at the fact that any conception of religious practice ignores personal experience of the world in favor of established religion and social norms. The basic religious principles espoused by Kabir was simple. Human life as an enterprise is fundamentally pointless, and the only meaningful activity that is possible is the active search for union with the divine. In one of his poems, Kabir writes, "All that is born must die. That is the law of nature. The fool believes it to be the end of the journey. The wise man knows it is only a step in the journey." In seeking his union, he saw the divine as being both the meaning and the end of all existence. As Benjamin Walker, in his Kabir, A Hindu World, an encyclopedic survey of Hinduism, notes, the philosophy of Kabir is pantheistic, although he was one of the founders of the deistic movement in India, he permitted the adoration of Vishnu, Rama, Hari, a form of Vishnu, Govinda or Krishna, and Allah, which he said were merely names for the one, supreme deity. However, even the doctrine of pantheism is way too narrow for the mystic's view of the Lord's ultimacy, as he saw God encompassing all material existence, but simultaneously transcending it. Now we come to a brief, description of Kabir's Bijak. The Bijak is a sacred book of the Kabir Panthis, or sect devoted to Kabir. Kabir Panthis are a mixed community of ascetics and common householders from humble background who were ardent Kabir followers and controlled his work for documentation. Due to the visibility of the Panth, the Kabir collection best known to Westerners in the early 20th century was the Bijak. The word Bijak means anthology or a guide or a compilation. It also means a seed. Philosophically and theologically speaking, Kabir's poetically mystical doctrine represents a synthesis of Hindu and Muslim approaches to divinity. His perspective, specially recorded in the Bijak, is indicative of his multivalent and universalistic approach to spirituality. His vocabulary is replete with ideas regarding Brahmans and Atman, and also the fundamental Hindu idea of karma and reincarnation. Simultaneously, he was driven to reject the caste system as a ridiculous conveyance that had no place in the true seeker's life. However, he often advocated leaving aside the Qurans and Vedas in order to simply follow Sahaj path, the simplistic or natural way to oneness to God. We come to the conclusion of this article. We can say that the spiritual preachings of Kabir elevated the oppressed humanity and gave strength to stand up to their feet and fight against all religious, social, and political inequalities. He created a new universalism and culture based on oneness of ultimate reality, brotherhood of mankind irrespective of their racial, ethnic, linguistic, or cultural differences. Syncretism does exist, and syncretism is also a value-loaded term. Syncretic values are very much desirable also. To recognize, accept, and follow the ideals and good religious thoughts and practices, even if they are alien to people and culture, is very much desirable. After all, every religion preaches us to be human. Individuals like Kabir have epitomized syncretic value during their lifetime and beyond through his poetic words. In his own spiritually heterogeneous way, Kabir provided a philosophical and theological approach to divinity that has influenced Muslims, Hindus, and Sikhs alike. Thank you.